But Joanne Zeiss was 22 when she began experiencing the terrifying symptoms that would stay with her for the next 17 years. It all started when Joanne began seeing things.
I was standing outside with a bunch of my friends, and I remember looking up and I saw what looked like a flock of birds just flying around up in the sky. I looked at my friends and I said, "Why are those birds always up there?" And they all looked at me, and nobody said anything, and so I knew then that something was wrong.
She had thought she had seen birds, but she realized there weren't any. And I think that was pretty scary for her. She felt like she was seeing things.
Joanne works as a graphic artist, and any problem with her vision could have devastating consequences. She wastes no time making an appointment with an optometrist.
He told me that I had something called floaters in my eye, and that they're little pieces of debris that break off from the edges of your retina and just float around. Go home and forget about it. So that's what I did.
Joanne gets used to seeing the specks floating in her field of vision, but a year later, the floaters are accompanied by intense pain.
Well, I walked outside and it was a bright sunny day, and I noticed that my eye hurt immediately as soon as I looked towards the light. When I came home and I looked in the mirror, I saw a red ring around the colored part of my eye, and if I looked very closely, I could see that there were tiny little blood vessels that were showing in that red ring. I panicked.
The doctor notices Joanne's iris is red and swollen and prescribes steroid drops to reduce the inflammation. But a few weeks later, they aren't helping. What's more, Joanne's vision is getting blurry and starting to affect her work.
Joanne mentioned the waviness when she was reading as a major problem.
It literally was like looking through a layer of cheesecloth.
Joanne rushes back to the hospital, where she's referred to a specialist, Dr. Stephen Foster.
Joanne had already lost some vision in the left eye when I first saw her. Joanne had uveitis, or inflammation inside the eye that was affecting her vision, and she was referred to me because of that.
Uveitis is an inflammation inside the eye. There are 4 types. The mild forms affect the front structures of the eye, but in the most severe cases, the inflammation damages retinal blood vessels in the back of the eye.
If it affects structures that are truly critical for good vision, like the retina or the optic nerve, it will blind a person.
Fortunately, Joanne has a mild form of uveitis, and her retina has not been affected. Dr. Foster prescribes more steroid drops and puts her on a strong anti-inflammatory drug. The effects are hit or miss.
The next few years were a progression of taking the pills, using steroid eye drops, and having things go away, and then it would recur again every 4 to 6 weeks. It was like clockwork.
Joanne probably saw a doctor twice, 3 times, sometimes 4 times a month.
But because Joanne is changing jobs throughout this period, her health insurance plan is also changing, and she finds it difficult to stay with one doctor. Each new doctor who examines Joanne prescribes a new course of treatment.
One of the doctors sat me down, and he suggested giving me steroid injections behind my eye. He said that this would put the medication directly in the area of my eye that needed the treatment. The first thing that ran through my head was, no way, you're not coming anywhere near me with a needle.
1 week later, Joanne receives her first steroid injection.
Every aspect of her was braced up for this.
Just the thought of it, I can't imagine what that must have been like.
The doctor told me to lie back on the table and that I needed to stare up and try not to look at him as he's coming towards me with the needle. And I remember not feeling so much pain as an incredible amount of pressure. And the amount of pressure was almost unbearable.
To Joanne's disappointment, the one injection has little effect, so the doctors prescribe a series of shots over the next 12 months. But after a year, Joanne's vision remains blurry, and her eye begins to throb with pain.
I was actually pretty frightened at this point because I had no idea what the whole thing was going to lead to.
She was concerned that she might lose her sight. It must be devastating.
Joanne goes back on anti-inflammatory pills, and her vision eventually stabilizes. Then, a few months later, she is struck with odd new symptoms.
One morning I woke up and I went to go stand up, and as soon as my feet hit the floor, I just felt this awful pain through both of my ankles. The first thing that ran through my mind was, what next? I already have eye problems. Now I've got this. I must be the unluckiest person in the world.
For the past 4 years, Joanne Zeiss has experienced blurred vision and mysterious pain in her eyes and joints. One morning, the joint pain is so excruciating that Joanne can barely get out of bed.
I just figured I was walking around too much at work. I was doing too much climbing, I was being too active, I was having pain in my shoulders, I was having pain in my hands.
At first, Joanne forces herself to work through the pain.
Joanne's not the kind of person who will be, oh, my hand hurts, oh, my arm hurts, oh, I'm so tired, I can't do this today. She's not sitting there, pity me, pity me. It was just, this is what's happening, I have to deal with it. And she just moves on with things.
But when the pain becomes too unbearable, Joanne seeks out help. Her doctor suspects she's having a bad reaction to the anti-inflammatory she's taking for her eye problems. He prescribes a new drug, often used for arthritis. It works.
I was amazed that my joints all seemed to feel almost normal again, and I didn't have the pain in my ankles and in my hands the way I'd had for quite a while. So life was good again.
But just as Joanne begins feeling better, she is stricken with yet another excruciating symptom.
All of a sudden, I started getting sores in my mouth. It wasn't like the regular old canker sores that would be gone in 3 or 4 days. These would get red and raised up. It would all of a sudden just kind of break open and become an ulcer, and it hurt a lot.
I remember for quite a while, Joanne had to drink milkshakes because she couldn't chew.
I had to drink through a straw because that was the only way I could get the liquid down past the ulcers that were in the front of my mouth without having it hurt too much.
They were in her whole mouth, her tongue, the insides of her mouth, the roof of her mouth.
Terrified that she may have herpes, Joanne makes an appointment with her dermatologist.
He took a look in my mouth and he said, what you have right now is herpetiform ulcers. And I said, well, does that mean I have herpes? And he said, no, it's just the medical term for a whole bunch of ulcers in one small area. And I just breathed this big sigh of relief.
Doctors think ulcers can be caused by many things: stress, acidic foods, an immune reaction. There's no cure, and they must be allowed to run their course. The dermatologist prescribes some medication for the pain so that Joanne can eat. But as the ulcers come and go, Joanne begins to notice odd skin problems on other parts of her body.
I started getting these small, clear lesions on my hands and on my ankles. You know, you'd want to scratch it, but as soon as you touched it, you'd just be in agony. So I went in to go see a doctor again.
The doctor tells Joanne it's most likely an allergic reaction, maybe to her laundry soap, and not to worry. But Joanne is worried. It's now been 8 years of escalating symptoms. First her eyes, then her joints, then ulcers, and now lesions.
I was going through so many different types of symptoms that I really was kind of in shock. I couldn't believe that any one person could have all these strange things happening to them.
But Joanne hasn't stayed with any one doctor long enough for him to be able to see the big picture. She is terrified that not having one consistent physician is causing things to slip through the cracks.
I was very frustrated at the number of doctors that I had to see. I think I'd seen 6 primary care doctors, an unknown number of ophthalmologists for my eyes. So I felt like I was spinning my wheels over the years and that I really was getting nowhere.
Joanne doesn't know where to turn. One morning, driving to yet another doctor's appointment, she suddenly begins to feel as if she's fighting a battle she can't hope to win.
So I'd woken up this one morning and I'd really had it. I was actively crying in the car. You know, I was just so tired of everything. And I thought, well, there's a bridge coming up. You know, if I just turn the wheel just enough, I'm going 70, you know, I could just go into that bridge and then I wouldn't have to think about it anymore. You know, I didn't want to take it anymore.
No one can tell Joanne Zeiss what has been causing her painful eye, joint, and skin problems. After 7 years of suffering, her symptoms show no sign of letting up. Then, one morning, something terrifying happens.
There was one day that I was working, and I remember looking down and I did a double take because I wasn't seeing something normally.
She was working as a graphic artist. She was a forms designer.
And I looked down at the page, and what I was seeing was the letters that were appearing on the page appeared broken. The lines of type themselves were wavy. And I was horrified. I picked up the phone and called my eye doctor. And once I finished describing it, he told me, "You have to stop what you're doing and come in now."
Joanne races to her ophthalmologist's office. The doctor thinks there is something wrong with her retina. He performs a test called a fluorescein angiogram, where an orange dye is injected into Joanne's veins to better photograph the blood vessels in the retina. The results are frightening. A few vessels have ruptured, and blood is leaking into Joanne's central vision, blinding her left eye. The only hope is emergency laser surgery, but that too is risky.
He said, "I'm very good with a laser, but I can't guarantee that when I hit that area with the laser to seal off the blood vessels that I'm not going to destroy your central vision at the same time." I'm thinking to myself, either you can not have this surgery done and watch your vision go, or you can take a chance. He'd do it right. So I signed my life away and just started praying that he'd hit the right spot.
Fortunately, the laser surgery is a success. The hemorrhaging blood vessels are sealed off, saving Joanne's vision. But her recurring symptoms still show no sign of diminishing.
To not know what you have, not know how it's going to develop, and not know if there are any treatments available for you, it must be devastating.
I really kind of reached my boiling point in terms of how much longer was I going to be able to put up without having a diagnosis.
Joanne takes matters into her own hands. She makes a list of all her symptoms and searches for anything that will tie them together.
I said, there's got to be some reason why I have all of these things. So I spent so much time on the internet at that point, it was ridiculous. I started plugging in all the different symptoms that I had. Eventually I narrowed it down to a few possibilities, but I couldn't get any doctor to agree that that's what I might have.
Then, in the summer of 1997, Joanne gets another chance. After finding out that she's developed a cataract, she's referred to Dr. Stephen Foster, the same specialist who diagnosed her 17 years earlier with uveitis, or inflammation of the eye. She brings her list of symptoms to the appointment.
You know, I had my ideas about what might be wrong, but I wanted to hear from him what he would think a diagnosis would be. So I thought, well, I'll just hand it to him and see what he thinks.
She pulled out of her purse a relatively long list of many things that had happened medically.
He was amazed at the progression of symptoms.
Joanne, over those 17 to 20 years, was not leading a normal life.
He'd only seen me back then when I had just the eye problems and a little bit of the joint problems, but not this entire list of things.
Literally within seconds, it became clear what this was all about.
He just looked up at me, then he said, "You know, I do know what you have."
Well, one of the most prominent signs and symptoms was recurrent canker sores. A lot of people have canker sores, so that in and of itself does not the diagnosis make. But when one couples that with the recurrent skin lesions plus uveitis, it becomes instantly obvious that this is Behcet's disease.
Behcet's disease is a rare disorder that causes inflammation of blood vessels throughout the body. When a blood vessel is inflamed, it can irritate the area around it, leading to oral ulcers, skin lesions, joint pain, and recurrent eye inflammation. There is no cure, and the exact cause of the disease is unknown, although it seems to be most common in people of Asian and Mediterranean descent.
Currently, approximately 25% of patients with Behcet's disease with eye involvement will be blind inside of 5 years. It's not curable, and why blood vessels in the mouth or on the skin might be affected today and blood vessels in the back of the eye might be affected 6 months later is not at all clear.
I'd come across the name Behcet's already, and I was leaning towards saying, well, that's probably what I've got anyway. But I needed to hear it from somebody who was an expert in it. And to me, that was like shining a spotlight in a dark area because I had waited so long for somebody to tell me what I had wrong with me.
Dr. Foster is the one that unlocked that key, and in a way, it's like removing a mask.
Finally had a name. Now she could do something about it.
Dr. Foster puts Joanne on a long-term treatment using an anti-inflammatory drug that can prevent flare-ups in the blood vessels of the skin, joints, and eyes. Today, Joanne's Behcet's disease is in semi-remission.
Actually, I think Joanne's long-term prognosis is excellent.
It has been quite a while since she's had any symptoms at all.
But for 17 years, Joanne suffered, which is not uncommon for people with Behcet's.
There's no test. There's no Behcet's test. It's not as if these things spring full-grown. They evolve through time. That was the case with Joanne. The first thing that began with her were the aphthous ulcers or canker sores. And it took a long time for other things to slowly evolve to the point that now it's clear. It doesn't last forever. It does have a life to it, a beginning, a middle, and an end. And I think Joanne's is on the back nine. I think she's going to be finished with this long before she's ready to say goodbye.
Today, Joanne no longer works as a graphic artist. She has dedicated her life to raising awareness for Behcet's disease.
I didn't want anybody else to have to go through 17 years worth of a nightmare like I did. And as far as I'm concerned, that's the main thing in life. If you can help somebody else, then do it.